Hello, how's it hanging? It is I, the Rat Daddy, and today in RimWorld, my friends, we are going to be founding and rebuilding the Shattered Empire once more. Whereas they were once the regal, majestic, royal, governing body of this planet, they are now but a sad, pathetic shell of their former selves. Although there are still quite a few flourishing, thriving Imperial cities, there are more and more that are left in ruin, abandoned to time. But we plan on fixing that. We're starting off with 3 colonists who are pretty well educated in the Shattered Empire and who have decided to try to start their own, as we literally just talked about, of course, but that does also mean that we are going to be starting off with the standard crash-landed loadout with all the resources and everything that comes with it. A quick disclaimer before we begin as well, I have done a very similar video to this with a basically identical title in the past, except that video was only for our Clone Army series and was to do a bit of lore building and to show what's going on around the galaxy, of course. This is completely separate and not part of that empire, unfortunately. Nevertheless, let us begin on our epic reconstruction journey. First things first, we're going to start equipping all of our weapons and armor that we have landed with. And next up on the docket, we need to build ourselves some proper shelters. So we started building a small little residential housing section here, almost like a barracks, except it is separate, with us all having our own rooms made of fine wooden walls. That way it'll help us keep from having mental breaks. Fine walls are a bit harder to build, and thus they take more resources and time, so that was basically all we did on our first day. We'll need plenty of rest though, as there's a lot more to do. Ah yes, such humble beginnings, the perfect spot for a capital city of the new empire. We had also landed with our pet yak Dolly, although I'm not too fond of that name, so I decided to give her a new one. She will now be known as Inbred the Yak. I'm sure there's at least one of you out there that gets that callback reference. Anywho though, the very next day we started working on some storage crates on some pallets just outside of our new little homes here. That way we can keep all of our resources and food that we landed with safe and secure and out of the weather. Thankfully, we had started off with quite a bit of survival meals and medicine, so we shouldn't have to worry about that for a little while, allowing us to focus on empire building. Late one evening, we spotted a fallen monolith, an ancient structure of architect design. Thanks to our great colonial education, we're well aware of what these monoliths are capable of and the dark powers that they hold within. We plan on harnessing those powers to our advantage for our new empire. Ginny, with her advanced intellectual prowess, she graduated top of her class, began to investigate this monolith, activating it after prodding with it a bit. In particular, we're quite interested in bioferrite extraction, as this resource might prove crucial to our toppling of the old Shattered Empire, and there's also a few other things on this tech tree that I think we might find useful as well. All good things take time though, so we need to begin researching and investigating the monolith more so, and also prepping for the entities that will no doubt be coming to attack us very shortly. Which is all well and good, but we also still need to focus on the colony itself and turning it into something at least of a proper village, building ourselves a proper power generation method in turning some lights on around here, and also tilling some soil and planting some crops, since we do need to feed ourselves and we also need to make a little bit of money. As you might have guessed, kingdoms and empires require funding. Late one night, some visitors were attacked by a sight stealer out in the dark. We came to reinforce them, but they seemed to handle him pretty well, knocking him to the ground. Thankfully, he's alive. We chained the filthy little bastard up next to our wood-fired generator. Hello there, not so handsome. We are going to study the shit out of you. Indeed, this grotesque little creature would help us out quite a bit with learning new technologies related to the monolith and architect ancient deck. We also had a bunny rabbit go mad. Now, I thought this might be due to the monolith, but I think it's just a crazy bunny, so we killed it pretty quickly, and we ended up turning it into stew. Yummy! Of course, though, we didn't want to just have the Sight Stealer and possibly any other entities and or anomalies that we end up capturing just outside with no real protection or any way to keep them from running away other than a few ropes, so we started mining out a small little space across from where we're going to be building our actual capital city and our residential area, yada yada yada. We would end up having the opportunity to name ourselves as well as our new city. For the faction, we decided to go with the new Imperial Order. Not only intimidating, but also I feel it sends a message to the current empire that is shattered all around the planet. And for the name of the city, we went with Imperial Mountain. Not very creative, but I tried. After we ended up finishing the naming, we also noticed there was a little skirmish between a cultist and a pig pirate bandit whatever, and yeah, so they're both dead. That was pretty cool, and we barely had to do anything. The most cool part about the entire thing is now we have some Molotovs and some grenades, so that should help us out. We had also finished up the new containment area for our little milk machine here. Milk machine. Hey, that's not a bad idea. Technically, he doesn't produce milk, but we are going to be milking him for research in bioferrite pretty soon. We would spend about a day or so working on a brand new communal area for a kitchen as well as a food storage area, but unfortunately, this would be interrupted by our very first raid. A singular tribeswoman by the name of Vulture with no armor. You poor dumb creature. She was, however, wearing a stone mask, so I guess we'll just have to aim for her massive body instead of her tiny little head that is well protected. Oh, look, we ended up taking her down. Lucky for you, ma'am, unlike the current empire of the planet, we believe in re-education and rehabilitation. You would make a fine fighter. Obviously, at the moment, we don't currently have a proper prison setup, so she's going to have to bunk with the Sight Stealer for a moment. Not to worry, though, he doesn't bite. I don't even think he has teeth. Does he? Might be best not to try to pet him. We had also finally got our very first harvest of rice that we had grown. Finally a self-sustaining colony. Soon to be much, much more, of course. And with that, we had finally finished our research into bioferrite extraction as well. As much as we'd like to start harvesting bioferrite, though, we need to start working on some infrastructure if we ever hope to thrive and also to become and reform the empire. And as far as I can think of, there's no empire in the solar system, or perhaps even in this quadrant of the galaxy, that has an entire city made of kiln wood that would just be easily burnt down. No. So we are going to be cutting a lot of stone in hopes of using it as our main resource for buildings now. But as we were working our fingers to the bone, we ended up receiving notification from the Empire. They had one of their knights in the area being chased by a man-hunting squirrel. Such a pathetic coward, and they were seeking refuge here. Oh yes, we'll give you refuge, my little friend. Of course we accept you and we'll keep you safe. In our prison cell, you poor dumb bastard. There's only one empire and you're looking at it. Welcome to the slave quarters, pal. Well, technically a makeshift prison, but we'll enslave you soon. Now, technically, we did hold up our end of the bargain as we stomped the squirrel to death too. I guess that counts. Now look, I'm gonna level with you. Of course, we are the one true empire and we are going to overthrow the current empire, but they do currently have a little bit better equipment, i.e. guns and armor, than we do, so we need some proper defenses. We're going to start working tirelessly on some walls. We would also work tirelessly on getting our very first harvest of our cotton plants, meaning that we have a decent bit of cloth to put in our storage. But since we're prioritizing defenses at the moment, we don't have enough time to take it off for trade. We finally ended up enslaving the Imperial Knight and stripped him of his attire and, of course, course, his title. I'm not going to even give him the courtesy and the respect of pronouncing his full name, so we'll just call him Azzy. Surprisingly, for a royal, he was actually pretty good with his hands. He had quite the construction skill, and that was perfect for us as we're constructing a gigantic wall, of course. As we were constructing, we also had a small group of shamblers entering the area. Basically, the byproduct of some type of weapon testing from the Architects long ago, and it's a whole big thing, but we do want to try to maybe capture one of them and study it. Shamblers can be incredibly dangerous, but when you have a tight-knit squad like ours with grenades and a few different types of firearms, you can handle them pretty well, and of course, so we did. We ended up killing far too many though, and we only had one left to study who we swiftly beat down with our fists. Sorry about that, old girl, but you're in a much safer environment now, and hey, if you're good to us, maybe we'll even feed you some corpses that we have lying around, huh? Would you like that? I'm sure you would. To make things a little bit less informal during our research, we decided to give her a name, the name of La Leche. I know. Giving a name to a sight stealer and to a shambler is kind of like giving a name to maybe a cow when you own a slaughterhouse, right? You know, eventually you're probably going to have to kill it, but it's just so hard not to treat them like pets when you have to, well, pet them and feed them and study them for their cosmic abyss abilities. Sometime later, the Empire would finally show their ugly ass once more, sending 2 soldiers to try to take us on. Though we do outnumber them, make no mistake, these are some extremely experienced, skilled, and dangerous warriors. So it's a good thing that we built walls and embrasures to hide behind so we can fire out and hope to God that we hit them right between the eyes, eh? Well, we also had a bit of an ace up our sleeve. You see, our enslaved Imperial Knight has a psychic ability known as the Vertigo Pulse. Basically, using his mind powers, he can make people super dizzy and make them throw up. This only seemed to work against one of the Imperials, but you know what? Half of them being decommissioned because they keep vomiting all over the battlefield? I'll take it any day. I can't stress enough how much this helped us, because if they were both focused on trying to kill us, I think that they might just have managed it. But thanks to that and our grenades, we finished off the puking blunder, and then shortly after would be his partner. Not before we gave her a sharp 32 shell straight through the old abdomen though. Sheesh, they did end up giving us quite a wallop, but we would end up surviving all the bullets and the cuts and everything like that. And at the end of the day, I gotta tell you, our morale has never been higher. To think that we actually defeated some of their heavily armed soldiers, we might just pull this off. Oh, I also neglected to mention, we have quite a few wild humans wandering around in the area. Not really sure where they came from, but they are helping us dispose of Imperial corpses. I thought that was nice of them. By this point, we had a decent bit of silver. Okay, it wasn't much at all, but it was a teeny tiny little stockpile. And with that money, I think it might be a good idea for us to truly set up our faction and to begin expanding. The official founding of our empire. We are going to be an expansionist society that gives us our first settlement for free. The settlements we found will always be at level 2, meaning we can create more buildings for more money and for more population, as well as a bigger military, and after a year they will be cheaper to found. We're also going to be technocratic, which essentially just boils down to our other settlements being able to help us out with researching technology in a few different ways. Now then, with all the boring jibber-jabber out of the way, as you can see, we have now founded 2 brand new, well, villages. They're not exactly towns or settlements just yet, as it's only about 1 person per, but we will continue growing them. For now, we're going to be hiring some external laborers, and they're going to be getting paid a vast majority of the income that we make from these settlements. And in case you're wondering, how do you even make income from these? Well, it's by setting up different types of camps, like logging camps and also fur hunting camps, and then exporting all the resources we get, like logs and leather, to the Outlanders for some money. Even after paying our workers profits, we are going to be making just under 900 silver in taxes about every 5 days or so, which is not too bad of a start. It's like I said, empires need funding, of course, and ours is primarily going to be funded by exports and taxes, just like all good empires. Speaking of which, back at the city, we're building yet another wall on the eastern flank to ensure that we don't get, well, flanked from any enemies. We want to try to ensure that any attack that comes for us is going to be funneled through the southern entrance where we have our defenses. We'll still have to worry about sappers, but we'll get to that when it comes around. As we were constructing, our imprisoned person, known as Vulture, had busted through the wooden doors, and then we popped her in her nose and broke it, and then we took her back to her bed. But this made me think, we need a proper prison, right? We can't have people breaking out and also almost breaking the containment of our anomalies now, can we? Of course not. So that's exactly why we put a lot of time, effort, and resources into building a proper prison above our residential housing in the city. Made exclusively of stone, these will be much harder to break out of. Also, given the fact that these cells are much more pleasing to the eye and much more comfortable with some proper beds, we should end up recruiting fine folks like Vulture all that much faster. For a good few weeks or so, we would mostly just spend our time focusing on researching these anomalies and the monolith, simply of course to get as much knowledge and information about them as humanly possible, just to try to help us out with our little bioferrite experiments we plan on doing. It was also during this time that we finally convinced Vulture here to join us. I knew those hardwood floors and a nice comfortable bed would win you over, sister. Welcome aboard. We ended up giving her our bullpup rifle as, well, to be honest with you, surprisingly, even though she's a tribes person, she was pretty skilled with one. Now that she's part of the team, she could also go ahead and help us out with some day-to-day tasks, freeing up some room for more of our people to go ahead and work on some construction, as you can see right now. These are some of our very first stone structures other than the prison within the city. And quite fittingly, both of them are going to be factories. The one on the left here is actually going to be for our stone cutting to help us further our expansion and creation around the city. And the one on the right here is actually going to be a textiles factory, a place to store all of our cloth and also to produce any type of clothing or things like that if we so feel the need, and we're probably going to need to do that as we continue growing our population. A great example of this is actually Vulture herself, someone who we ended up making a nice shirt, some pants, and even a nice duster all out of cloth, and it's some pretty excellent tailoring work from our night slave. It's not exactly armor, but it sure as hell beats the shit out of being naked and getting shot at, that's for sure. Quick update on bioferrite shaping, which we recently finished. This is actually going to be very crucial later on, as it's going to allow us to create weapons and whatnot out of bioferrite as well. And it also frees us up to go ahead and start researching a bioferrite harvester. Yes, I know, I researched everything to go about making stuff from it before I figured out how to harvest it. You know, listen, I'm doing it, okay? I just need to prod this shambler in the back with a stick another, I don't know, 50 more times and listen to it squeal, and we should be good to go. Interestingly, we would get yet another attack, but this time around it wasn't a tribal people or even the Empire. It was actually some bandits. It would seem our little city is really on the map now, so much so that they've come to try to rob us and kill us. Well, even as flattered as I am, I'm afraid we can't allow that. Thankfully, in recent days, we had to went ahead and added some wooden spike traps to our repertoire, and they ended up hitting a few of them, but they mostly just completely stepped over our barricades. Oh no. They even managed to get behind our walls and began attacking steel. We used Azzy's puke power against them, unfortunately hitting Cook and Steel with it as well, so it was a bit of a cluster, yeah. But eventually, after chucking a few grenades over there, we ended up killing the last of the pirates. Thankfully, with them all dead, we could go ahead and start tending to our wounds. Once again, we got out pretty lucky, and nobody ended up dying, although we would end up having quite a few infections that we had to waste our good medicine on. But you know what? I suppose we ended up better off than these sorry-ass pirates, and that's something to celebrate. Something else to celebrate is all the weapons and also a few drugs that they ended up dropping when we murdered them, and those will be great for money. Speaking of which, we had a bulk goods trader from the Outlanders who had come to trade with us. Absolutely perfect, because they could buy all of our cloth, and so they did, and so we ended up making a good bit of money off that as well. Take into account this, along with our taxes that we were getting every 5 days, and we were starting to amass something of a teeny fortune. Now, if you've ever seen or used the Empire mod, you probably know that in the beginning, the vast majority of your funds from taxes end up getting put back into your empire to settle more settlements and of course to grow bigger, and that's exactly what we're doing here. Now that we've got the Outlanders hooked on our textiles, we thought it might be a good idea to up the scale a bit and begin a gigantic growing zone of cloth in this area next to our little pond here. We're sure to make a lot more money on all this. Now you might be saying to yourself or your screen at me, you know, Rat Knight, I swear to God all you've been doing this entire video is research and selling and collecting taxes. All you're doing is making money and researching stuff. What's the point of all this? Well, it's actually very important, and there's a really good point. We're making a new empire, you silly little goober, and the research is far from finished. You see, we're really doing some double research, double dipping. Not only are we doing anomaly research, but we're also just doing normal research into things like machining so we can eventually make some defenses like automated turrets. And alas, we are also going to be making a lot more money. I know, I'm sorry, but we need to get all of this cloth put on to inbred the yaks back so that we can head out and sell it to the fine Outlanders of the land. Something tells me supplying them with textiles might make them pretty happy about having a new empire, and eventually they might even become our allies. I mean, in the long run, they're going to become our subjects, but for now, we could really use some friends. While we were out traveling and trading, we finally finished the research into bioferrite harvesters, allowing us to suck the milk out of those anomalies. With all the research and more importantly trade completed, we had a good bit of silver left, and yes, as you guessed it, once again we are settling 2 more settlements within our pretty near vicinity, all of which are also getting some areas built for logging and fur camps and mines and things like that, bringing in more and more taxes, up to 4,250 every 5 days once more, so a pretty massive jump, I'd say. With all this money going into our newly founded empire, we can also go ahead and start hiring and equipping some soldiers with a basic synthread t-shirt, as is custom here within the colonies, a nice rifle, and even a bioferrite helmet. Speaking of, let's not forget about those harvesters. We need to suck these little milkers for all they've got, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Now, I think we're going to use this mostly to equip ourselves with weapons and armor, but eventually we might start selling it as well if we get enough. We also discovered Christie. I don't know who that is or what that means, but apparently it gave us exactly what I was hoping for this whole time, which was knowledge into ghouls. Now, genuinely, I have no idea who Christie is, or if I'm just reading something wrong here, but I'm assuming we've discovered somebody's ghoul. Perhaps one of the Outlanders had one. I don't know. I do know, however, that our next research project is going to be into ghoul infusion, as we hope to use ghouls to help us in our mission of overthrowing the Imperials. With this new technology just on the horizon, we need a proper laboratory to go about testing out this new technology. And on to Jenny's little lab here, where she's been doing her research. We are going to be building something of an operating room, I suppose you could call it. It turned out pretty great. We ended up having 2 operating rooms with 2 tables in each for operations, you guessed it. We also have a table so the doctors and researchers can sit and chit-chat about their findings and whatever else they need to, and we also have a bioferrite shaper, which is going to help us create things out of bioferrite. Now, the lab looks great, but we won't actually be using it for any ghoul infusions anytime soon, as we still have a lot of research to do before those are even a viable option. In the meantime, however, while we're waiting on that, we had our very first snow occurring here since we founded our empire, and also since we've landed on the planet, I believe. It's a good thing we started planting extra food so we could ride out the winters. Something we forgot to account for, though, was heating inside all of our buildings. So we started installing plenty of vents in between all the rooms, and we're also chucking in a few wood stoves in each of the rooms in the housing quarters here to keep everyone nice and toasty 24/7. We also began to experience attacks against our own empire and our settlements for the very first time from the current Shattered Empire. As you can see, they're attacking us with a military force of 4, which which is a bit devastating because our settlements only have a military force of 1. Meaning that until we can spend more money to upgrade our military and our troops, we are going to continue experiencing failures in our defense and our people are going to die. But the only way to increase the military budget is by increasing the amount of villages and settlements that we have, which is exactly what we're going to do. That way we can get more taxes and yada yada. You understand where I'm going with this. Our military might not be all that strong at the moment, but we can at least fight back and continue pushing forward. While we were balancing the defense spending budget, Jenny had finally finished up research into ghoul infusion, which we were tickled plum pink about, but the question remains, who is going to be willing to undergo this operation, and who can we afford to lose? Well, my friends, look no further than the wild humans that have been roaming and terrorizing our territory for the last few months. Now, look, normally we would be pretty opposed to forcing some type of experimental operation on some wild people out in the woods. You know, that's probably a no bueno, but they really haven't been doing anything this entire time except taking up space and stealing our crops, so we are going to be giving them a proper purpose, I think. Hello, hello, our horrific honeys. These two bad mamacitas, these abhorrent abominations against humankind itself, are going to help us win this war. If we can manage to get enough ghouls in our empire fighting for us, it's untelling what we'll be able to accomplish. They're damn near indestructible, and the only thing they care about is eating meat, of course. After we get them some wartime prosthetics, I think we'll be good to go. Our new wartime creations, along with the fact that our empire is getting bigger and bigger every single day, the more money we make, the faster we grow. Yes, I think all these things combined mean it's time for a proper Imperial civil war. The Empire is back. Boy howdy, thanks for watching today's video and thanks for making it to the end of the video. Please give me a like and a subscribe and all that other junk that everybody else begs for on this platform. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for watching though. I hope you guys have enjoyed. I guess this is going to be a something of a mini series here. You know, like I said in the beginning, I kind of done this before where I rebuilt the Shattered Empire. I'm doing air quotes with my fingers, but you can't see it. It was part of the Clone Army universe. And I just kind of thought, holy shit, that would be awesome if we just done it like normal RimWorld, and thus that's where this little idea came from, of course. If you guys have suggestions for what you'd like to see in this new little mini-series, be sure to let me know in the comment section down below. I think the next episode's going to be a great big civil war, and it very well may be our last episode in this, to be honest with you, hence the mini-series title, I guess. But again, I hope you guys have enjoyed. Thanks for watching. I love you. I'll see you later. Goodbye.